Function with Purpose Podcast. All things health, wellness, fitness, and education through the physical therapy perspective. I am Dr. Amy Bullock, owner and founder of Fortress Physical Therapy. Fortress PT is here to serve the Charlotte metro area by highlighting the importance of how and why physical therapy should be a part of your health and wellness lifestyle. Here we go. Welcome to Season 8, Episode 8 of the Function with Purpose podcast. Dr. Amy here with you guys today. Thanks for tuning in. This is the last episode of Season 8. 8 is my number. 8's my jam. 8, if you turn it horizontally, means infinity. I don't know, 8. I like the number 8. Alright, gonna get right to it. Something that I've been experimenting with since maybe the beginning of spring this past 2023 year. So maybe around like March, April. Yeah, that's probably about right. Cold plunge therapy, parentheses for recovery. So this is definitely a hot topic. I actually put myself through this and was very intrigued about it, so I figured, okay, I have access to a cold plunge area. I'm lucky because one of my athletes I train with, Anne-Marie, she has an outdoor pool. So she was personally doing this herself for recovery purposes for her muscles. And she's like, hey, you need to do this with me. I need someone to do this with. I'm like, all right, let's go. So that kind of leads into the purpose of cold plunging for specifically like muscle recovery. And there are some other aspects for cold plunging or cold exposure for boosting energy. But cold plunging in our example today is going to be primarily talked about for recovery, not for like boosting energy. So I started this, my first exposure was around April, I think, and it was during the CrossFit age group online qualifiers. And, you know, it's April time, it's still pretty cold out. And I remember doing that on day 2, I think. It was like that Saturday or something. Anne-Marie was like, hey, after we do these 2 workouts, we're going to go cold plunge at the pool, at her pool outside. And I was a bit scared. So, you know, we do our 2 workouts and we go there because we were done training or doing our qualifiers that day. And you know, I'm in my full workout, like, bathing suit, so it's a one-piece, and I'm like, oh, how cold's the water? She's like, 50 degrees, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm thinking, holy cow, this is going to be cold AF. And she's like, okay, she's walking me through it, helping me prep for this. She's like, okay, I know this is your first time, but when you get in there, you just got to get in there quick, go up to neck deep, hands up out of the water, all right? And we are going to spend 3 minutes in 50-degree water. But the key aspect is controlling your breathing. So Anne-Marie did this several times before, so she had, you know, some experience with this. So she's like, okay, do a 5 by 5 by 5 by 5 like breathing pattern. So box 5 breathing. So what that means is 5-second inhale, and this is nasal breathing only. 5-second inhale, 5-second hold, 5-second exhale, 5 seconds empty lungs. Hold. So let's just say that helped tremendously because when I first got into that water, it was cold. I felt like I was just going right into ice, right? So as soon as I got in, you know, my hands were above the water, the water was neck deep, It was up to my neck. Just a little bit of my shoulder was coming out. I was in a semi-squat position, and it was just so cold. So immediately I'm like, okay, closing my eyes, doing the box 5 breathing. And I would say about a minute and a half in, so halfway through, my body just started getting like tingles, like it was trying to rewarm itself, almost like goosebumps under the water. And we had a clock going, and Ian's like, okay, last 30 seconds. So I'm like, man, I can do this. Like, I was staying calm and collective, but then I was feeling this like tingly sensation, and it was pretty gnarly in a good way. So 3 minutes was up. We get out of the pool. Of course, we're shivering, right? This is my first time doing this. We have our towels there, and then, we kind of quickly dry off and we make our way inside. And she's like, okay, well, you're going to start to shiver pretty good. She goes, actually, go in and take a hot shower upstairs, and then get warm. Put your sweats on and everything, and then, kind of help promote your body to get warm. And I remember, number one, that hot shower felt great. Number two, definitely probably felt cold for probably about 3 to 4 hours post that 50-degree water cold plunge. And it was quite interesting because we started doing that probably like once a week, every like Saturday or Sunday. And, I was getting used to it. And I'm like, man, I like don't really feel as sore. Like, this is great. So our temperature of the water ranged from 50 degrees to about 54 degrees. So I probably did this maybe like 6 consecutive weeks in a row. We might have missed one. I can't remember at that time period. But after the second exposure, maybe, I did not take a hot shower afterwards, because I started reading a little bit more, and actually listened to recently, as well as even that time period, some podcasts regarding cold plunge. And I will put those references of those podcasts. One is from the Fwp Podcast. It's called Embracing the Cold. So I'll have that linked in the notes. And then the other one is from Andrew Huberman podcast, Using Cold and Heat to Improve Health. That one, Andrew's, was recently put out in July. So obviously I'm recording this podcast a little bit later, after July. It's very sciencey. Both of these podcasts are very sciencey, but it makes sense in my mind. So now, after getting back to my story, like my third cold plunge at Anne-Marie's pool, I chose to not do a hot shower after. And there's a reason behind that, right? So we want to promote our muscles to shiver and recover. So that coincides with exposing it to the cold, our muscles being promoted to be anabolic. Anabolic means build, right? Because when we exercise and train, we break down muscle tissue. That's called catabolism or catabolic. So when we exercise and train and lift weights, we break down muscle tissue. But when we recover, we want to build or promote anabolic environments. Not the steroids, people. I'm not talking about that. That is not good for you. But ending with the cold and promoting a natural response for the body and the muscles to shiver, right? To have these low-grade shivering aspects to help promote recovery even more. So in all, I'm going to talk about another story. So this is going to be a longer podcast today. Overall, cold plunge therapy, I love it. It is awesome. Now, I haven't really done it in the summer months because I just didn't feel like going out to buy ice, filling up the bathtub, putting ice in, and only spending 3 minutes in there. We basically we'd have to be paying for ice, which is ridiculous at this age. Timeline, paying for everything, paying for water anyways, bottled water. But, so, since the summer months, I've been doing something a little bit different, and this kind of stemmed off those 2 podcasts that I am referencing in the comments. So, as you may have known from my previous podcasts episodes, excuse me, I have the Fwp band. I'm not promoted by them, but the Fwp band provides insight of heart rate variability, respiratory rate, skin temperature, and sleep patterns and stress levels, and then exercise levels. So it's amazing. If it's something that you guys might be considering, I'll put the my personal Fwp link below, and you can click that, and you can get a 1 month free, as well as myself. But I don't get any other I don't get any perks from it. But I'll go ahead and link that in the show notes as well. However, so literally since April up until probably about end of June, beginning of July, my sleep recovery metrics were higher than normal. Like, when I first got the Fwp 2 years ago, my resting heart rate during sleep was like low 40s. My respiratory rate was like 14, like low 14 ranges, or higher 13. My heart rate variability was like in the 90s primarily. And I didn't feel hot at night. So that was a major thing. Like, when I would sleep, I felt hot. Like, I wasn't sweating, but I just felt hot. So I'm like constantly throwing my covers off and just not getting quality sleep. And then I'm like, man, what the hell is going on? So first thing that I did, number one, was take away my downfill blanket. Like, okay, I grew up in West Virginia. It gets pretty cold during the winter. And we keep the house pretty cold during the summer. So a downfill blanket, I'm like, oh, okay. No. Now, living in the South for 10 years, downfill blanket, get rid of it for me. All right, so I started sleeping with just my bed sheet, and then just a thin blanket, like a throw blanket on top. That helped me tremendously to not feel hot at night. Now, I do use a fan as well. I have one of those Dyson upright fans that kind of blows on me a little bit to keep cool air circulating in my bedroom. So, first and foremost, took that downfill blanket out, using my bed sheet and just a throw blanket. That started to stabilize my breathing and my resting heart rate during sleep. So my resting heart rate was starting to go down from mid-50s to mid-40s, and my respiratory rate was starting to decrease from 15 to about 14. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then this leads to specifically now the Andrew Huberman podcast that I listened to that like 2 or 3 times. And the person that he has on, is her name Ebony or something? I can't remember, but she's like a huge guru in hot and cold exposure and talks about like brown fat and all this stuff and recovery. But if just exposing the body to kind of cold water. So I'm like, okay. At nighttime, I usually take a hot shower, and then, you just turn the shower straight off, right? However, after listening to that podcast, there is known research that if you can expose the body to, it seems, the most optimal range of 11 minutes a week to cold exposure that will kind of create goosebumps. It doesn't have to be 50-degree water. It doesn't have to be 54-degree water. Just something to kind of create goosebumps on your body. And ending your day prior to sleep with a cold aspect of the shower. So after I would take my shower, hot shower, I turned it down to the coldest aspect that created goosebumps and stood under the shower for about 90 seconds and just breathed. It wasn't super cold, but I was getting goosebumps. And I started to accumulate, 11 minutes a week. So that's like 4 exposures of 90 seconds and then 2 with a minute, something like that. I don't know. Check my math, write it down. And my sleep, and especially my heart rate variability, has been in the 100s. I haven't hit the 100s since when I first got the Fwp band 2 years ago. So my baseline sleep metrics appear to be stabilizing. My heart rate variability now, when I wake up, is in the mid-90s to low 100s. My resting heart rate is into the low mid-40s. My respiratory rate is in the low 14s, high 13s. My light sleep is decreasing. I'm getting more REM sleep and slow wave deep sleep. And honestly, the only 2 things that I changed over the past month or 2 is taking away my downfill blanket, sleeping with a bed sheet and just a blanket, a throw blanket, check. And then ending my hot showers with 1 minute to 90 seconds of just letting the cold water hit my body. I don't know, but I'm a science person, so I'm still experimenting with it. But I will say, my sleeping metrics have significantly improved. So, reverting back to cold plunge therapy for recovery, there is solid research that when we expose ourselves to like full body cold plunge, some current research found that, or majority of current research found that an accumulation of 11 minutes a week, which can be broken up throughout the week, it'd be, a minute or 2 exposure here and there, seems like the optimal time range for cold exposure or cold plunge therapy. For cold water, the optimal temperature range appears to be 59 degrees Fahrenheit. But if you actually listen to these 2 podcasts that I'll have reference, something that will kind of cause goosebumps. We will also see that ending the day to some type of cold exposure or plunge can effectively and specifically promote muscle recovery. So think of the muscle, like you shivering, right? You shivering is going to help promote these little hormones that are released from the brain to be shoved and promoted to the musculature and through the blood and the veins, right? To release, which leads into my next couple points, norepinephrine, or aka adrenaline. It's a neurotransmitter that is released from the brain, as well as regulating cortisol levels more precisely. If you don't know what cortisol levels are, just go ahead and Google it. It's basically our stress hormone. And it can get very out of whack. But just by exposing yourself to some type of cold exposure or cold plunge, accumulating 11 minutes for the week, if you are cold plunging, the optimal cold, the temperature of the water appears to be 59 degrees. But then, in my recent experience, ending my hot showers at night with 90 seconds of cold water just hitting my body, I can vouch for my metrics and my even stress levels have definitely decreased. They're more balanced. So, this was a long podcast. So cold plunge therapy for recovery, if it's something that you're considering and, you don't have, I will say, you don't have any comorbidities, like you don't have neuropathy in your arms and legs, you don't have any open wounds, any red or yellow flags, you don't have any cardiac issues or heart issues, you're not, claustrophobic or anything, or you're not afraid of water, especially if you actually plunge. You're overall pretty healthy. That might be something to try out for recovery, because if you're a pretty avid exerciser as well, I can definitely vouch for, after putting myself through a CrossFit bout test weekend of 4 or 5 days long and 2 or 3 workouts a day, like, I didn't feel as sore. And it seems like my muscles were a little bit better recovered. So yeah, if you guys have any questions or comments, definitely post them in the comments below. And again, check out these references. If you have a long car drive, just put the podcast on and listen. It might take a couple listens to really soak in the information. So yeah, that concludes season 8. We will see you guys in the next season. A little bit different setup coming to you in the future. Thanks for listening, and enjoy that coffee, if you do have that coffee in hand. That's a wrap for today's episode, Function with Purpose podcast. For more information on this episode, please check out the show notes within your podcast app. Be sure to subscribe, like, share, or drop your comments and questions below. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Thanks for the listen. Pursuit, precision, purpose.